Okay, I've been playing Spiderman Miles Morales on PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 actually. I got code for PlayStation 4, then I also got code for PlayStation 5 a few days later. So I've had a lot of experience with both machines. I have been playing a lot of the game. I want to talk to you today about the game, what I think about it, a little bit of performance stuff here and there, but really about what the game is actually like. So first, PlayStation 5 review I think we are all doing around the world. Very excited for it. All this and more after the drop. So in terms of the actual gameplay I'm going to be showing, in terms of spoilers, I don't want to be spoiling too much for anybody. I'm only going to be showing the first 45 minutes, maybe an hour tops of this actual game, and the story beats that you do see within the first 45 minutes to an hour. The rest I'm going to hopefully leave to you guys so you can enjoy the story. I'm just going to try and use that for the gameplay. So first things first, I absolutely loved what they did with 2018 Spiderman. I think for me, the most unique thing about it was the most blockbuster, like Avengers almost level of just explosive moments. It just leapt off the screen. A lot of the time I felt like I was just watching a movie. It was so well constructed, some of those big, explosive superhero moments. And I was quite blown away that they were able to pull that off so amazingly. And you really walked away from that not only playing an amazing game, but you also felt like you kind of watched an amazing movie at the same time. And as we all know, the 2018 Spider-Man went on to be one of the highest grossing exclusive PlayStation games that we've ever seen, and rightfully so, because it was so amazing. So I think the level of expectation was pretty high for Miles Morales, but I felt pretty confident that this was going to be a pretty good game. The combat in 2018 version was fantastic. The story was solid. It really made you feel like you were Spider-Man. The swinging was amazing. Everything was pretty darn good. So I didn't think they were going to go back here and try and reinvent the wheel, and they haven't done that. Miles Morales really does lean on a lot of the things that they already did in 2018. Why fix something that's not broken? The combat system is extremely similar. Of course, you have the defining factor of having bioelectrical punches in your sleeve now, which are called venom punches. But apart from the bioelectrical punches and venom punches and all those types of venom moves that you have, it's ultimately going to be a very similar experience for you in terms of combat. Swinging also feels very similar. I don't really know if they changed the swinging at all. When I was swinging around, I was really trying to figure out, have they tried to improve this? Or did they feel like they just had it just right, the Goldilocks formula, and they just didn't want to touch it? When you are playing this game, I do feel like the entire time I was just playing more of what I already know and love from the 2018 version, which is not a bad thing. For me, the story is where they really tried to first define themselves as their own game. Of course, this is about Miles Morales. It's not about Peter Parker. It's also about an origin story more than we saw from the 2018 version with Peter Parker. It really puts us in the middle of his journey. We already know the origin story. We've seen it a million times over. It just gets to the nitty-gritty of him taking down Kingpin and Mr. Negative and all the host of evil villains that we meet throughout that whole journey. Where with this one, it really starts with an origin story. He already knows his powers exist, but you get to see Miles Morales slowly but surely come into his own and try and grapple with the idea of what it is to be his own style of Spider-Man and feel like he can stand toe-to-toe to the Spider-Man that we already know and love. With Peter Parker's story, of course, we saw Peter Parker and Aunt May in that journey, but with this one, there was a bit more players to this, and I think Miles Morales' family and the way that they all play their own part throughout this story, I felt like it had scope to deliver a more emotional story. And although at some moments it does feel quite impactful, the story, for me personally, it didn't have the same emotional punch that I would have liked. I feel like the 2018 version just really hit home and had some amazing emotional beats to it that really displayed the strength and the sacrifice that Peter Parker has to make, where with this one, it was just a little watered down. Having said that, I still thoroughly enjoyed it. In terms of the cinematic moments in the story though, I do feel like the 2018 version was just absolutely exceptional, and he really did set a really high bar. It was going to be hard for them, Miles Morales, to really try and compete with that. If you compare the explosive moments of 2018 compared to this one, it doesn't really measure up for me. It's not the only yardstick, of course, but it is something to consider when, for me, that was a really unique thing that they brought to the table that I don't feel many other games really have, in terms of creating a game that makes you feel like you're watching a blockbuster movie. Now, the funny thing is, I actually received code first for PlayStation 4. So I was like, okay, I'm going to play it on PlayStation 4 and, enjoy it as much as I can until I get PlayStation 5. Now, I had already finished the main story when I received the PlayStation 5 code. So I thought, okay, I'll jump in now and actually start playing some PlayStation 5. The funny thing is, right, I'm going to show you now. I'm playing PlayStation 4's version on the PlayStation 5, and this is the loading time, right? Then you jump onto the PlayStation 5 version playing on the PlayStation 5, and here's the loading time. What's crazy is the PlayStation 4 version that I played on the PlayStation 5 had access to that SSD, had access to that power, but still had a really slow loading time, which is kind of crazy to see. That they just architecturally, how they coded it or whatever, didn't allow the PlayStation 4 version, if you're playing on PlayStation 5, to utilize that power and utilize that SSD. Also, I played in multiple ways on PlayStation 5, the Fidelity mode and the performance mode. I'm showing them now. The 60 FPS without 4K, and then the 30 FPS also showing ray tracing. Now you can see here, when you're playing on PlayStation 4, it looks like you're getting the reflection off the big buildings, and behind you, you're surely going to see those exact buildings. But of course, you don't, okay? You're not getting ray tracing there. You're also not getting ray tracing if you do performance mode at 60 FPS. That's something that you lose on the PlayStation 5. On the PlayStation 5 though, if you do Fidelity at 30 FPS, you are seeing those actual buildings behind you. If you are running up the building or if you're looking through the glass, the reflections you are seeing behind you are exactly those buildings. And that's pretty cool, man. When I was swinging through, I was getting blown away by swinging through the cities and seeing those buildings be reflected through the glass. It really did add maybe 10% to the experience. It wasn't an absolute make or break of why you would want to go to PlayStation 5, but it was pretty cool to see that they're implementing that. Another thing I tried was haptic feedback on the PlayStation 4 version, playing on the PlayStation 5. I know it might be getting a bit confusing here. But I tried that. You're not getting, from what I could see, you're not getting any haptic feedback if you play on the PlayStation 4 version on the PlayStation 5. But when you do jump onto the PlayStation 5 version on the PlayStation 5, you are, of course, experiencing haptic feedback. Now, it's not as powerful as I would have expected it to be in this title. We did see Astro Playroom. There was a demo on PlayStation 5 that you can play, and that really demonstrates the power of haptic feedback, where with this, you can feel it sometimes, but it's not like, it doesn't completely change your entire experience when you're playing Spider-Man. When you're swinging, you can feel it a bit. When you're in cinematic moments, you definitely feel it sometimes. But all in all, it's quite forgettable for me. I was kind of going through it when playing on PlayStation 5 and going, that's right, there is haptic feedback. That kind of reminded me in that particular moment because I was in a cinematic, but the rest of the time, I'm kind of forgetting about it, if I'm being real. Going from 30 FPS to 60 FPS on PlayStation 5, you definitely feel a difference. But I'm going to be real here, after like 30 minutes or so, I forgot. I was not remembering that it was 60 FPS. It didn't really, for me, I was not constantly reminded by that. So it really depends on what you're looking to do. If you're, an FPS type of dude, then maybe 60 FPS is the way to go. I'm showing some footage of that now. If you're really looking for that ray tracing next generation, which of course is ray tracing, then you want to do the Fidelity mode. There's a skill tree in this one. There's 3 types of skill trees. There's the bioelectricity style tree. There's also the one that's just purely for combat, and a third one that I won't spoil because you unlock it through the story, but it also helps you when you're doing particular types of missions. Now, a lot of people are going to be wondering, is this worth buying on PlayStation 5 if I've got a PlayStation 4? And then there's going to be the other people that just missed out on getting a pre-order for PlayStation 5, and they're wondering, because they have to buy it on PlayStation 4, are they getting a dramatically different experience? Look, I really enjoyed playing it on PlayStation 4. I played the bulk of my experience on PlayStation 4. When I jumped onto PlayStation 5, I definitely felt like it had kicked up a notch, but maybe 5 to 10%. You are experiencing the haptic feedback, you are experiencing, of course, the ray tracing if you wish, but apart from that, you are still going to get a fantastic experience by playing it on good old PlayStation 4. So if you missed out on getting your pre-order for PlayStation 5, I would say don't worry about it. Just play it on PlayStation 4. It's totally fine, and it's a really great experience. If you bought a PlayStation 5 and you've got it on PlayStation 5, then it's a great game to jump on and finally experience next gen. You definitely will feel a little bit of an upgrade there. But I've tried my best to not really spoil too much about this. The combat is sensational. It's still fluid. It feels amazing. You do feel like Spider-Man. The swinging, again, they haven't changed much, if anything, because they didn't need to. I really feel like, in my conclusion, in my summation, this feels like a hefty DLC to me. It really does, and I think it's been priced correctly. Even though we are seeing next gen now being a lot more expensive, this is priced in Australia at about $94 when, you know, the new Demon Souls, I believe, is going to be around 130 bucks or so. So I think they've priced this a certain way to try and give people the expectation. Having said that, I finished this within 7 hours, maybe 8 hours tops, the main story, then you can do other things on top of that. But in reality, it does feel like they knew they had a winning product and they didn't want to fix something that's not broken. So when you're jumping in, you are experiencing something extremely similar to what you've already experienced. You are getting a new story. And one of the defining factors is the bioelectricity, which is important because when you are in combat, which you are a lot of the time in the game, you did want to feel like there was a slight defining factor of why you're going on this journey. Not just because Miles Morales' origin journey, but you want to feel also that the combat has something more to offer. So that's probably just enough in terms of combat to make it feel like it really gave you that oomph and feeling like there's just a little bit more to explore in terms of combat in this game. But me saying that the game feels like a hefty DLC isn't knocking the game. I think it's an exceptional game. I think it's a great launch title. A lot of people that love superhero movies and superhero games are going to jump into this. It's easily accessible. It's a great launch title for a next generation. And I think it's very easily digestible. I think it was a great game, a great first party next gen game exclusive to have on the Sony PlayStation 5. But I don't think that this has tried to reinvent the wheel. I think it really gives you a 7-hour experience to experience a bit more of New York City as Spider-Man, but as a different Spider-Man, Miles Morales. But all in all, I really enjoyed Miles Morales. I do think it's, you know, I don't give scores. 3 ice cream scoops out of 5, whatever. You know what, no, a 4.5 ice cream scoops out of 5. Definitely worth playing, especially if you liked the 2018 version. It's definitely worth jumping in again and experiencing it. I'm looking forward to everyone's reaction to actually playing the game, because I feel like this is going to be an easy sell to a lot of people that have already enjoyed the 2018 version. Guys, I'll be back with more news, I think, next week, and maybe some more reviews as the month goes on. Hope you enjoyed this. I'll see you guys next time. Laymen out!